Carol Lester is a 73-year-old woman who had a gambling problem. She was arrested and pled guilty to the charge of embezzling from her boss in order to feed her addiction to gambling, and she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. 73-year-old woman, arrested for embezzlement. She is a grandmother. She has no history of drug use or violence or arrests or anything like that. But she has run into some difficulty. She is suing the Corrections Corporation of America, which is one of the largest private prison corporations in the world.
Oh, our good friends from CCA. Oh, look at that. Imagine that. They're on another story on TYT Community. Wow.
Well, she tried to get them in trouble because while she was in prison, they stopped giving her thyroid medication. They gave her a different kind of medication instead, which made her sick. But when she complained about the fact that it was making her sick and causing her to faint several times, they ignored her and let her health just deteriorate. A nurse at the jail said that she also had a heart condition, but she was also denied access to a hospital or any sort of specialty care, and her health kept deteriorating. So as a result, she got a bunch of other inmates who said that they were being denied necessary medical care and prescription medications as well, and she and they wrote letters together to the Corrections Department, which instigated an investigation from the Department of Corrections, and that made the prison very angry. And the prison officials, as punishment for having been investigated because of her, insisted that she get a drug test. Well, they had been prescribing her Zantac, which often gives false positives for methamphetamines and is known for doing that. Well, she tested positive for methamphetamines, even though she has no history of illicit drug use. When it came back positive, she offered to pay for another test to prove that it was just a false positive and that she's actually clean, but they refused and instead decided to throw her in solitary confinement for 34 days.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
So for over a month, she was in a little cell by herself. And this is just, another one of those cases that this same company has been accused of over and over again. They've just over the last year, they've been accused of several cases of abuse and neglect and letting sick inmates lay ignored in their cell with soiled bedding and no food and no water. One man died in their care because the ambulance was deemed too expensive for them to spend their money on. And there have also been many allegations of overcrowding, leading to inmates having to sleep on the floor within the cell, inmate abuse, and also these private prisons using gangs within the gangs of inmates to help police the prison.
Little old grandma has a gambling problem, so she steals money, and that's bad, obviously. But is it get thrown in solitary bad? No. No, absolutely not. This is crazy. And refusing to give her her medication, refusing to let her get a separate drug test to prove that she's not on meth, because she's a 73-year-old grandma. She's not messing with meth. Are you crazy?
Right. If she smoked meth, she would probably die.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of different issues here, but the first thing I want to bring up is, remember when solitary confinement was only for violent criminals that even within prison run their criminal empires from their jail cells? So we put them in solitary just in those very special cases.
Right. Absolutely.
Now solitary is just like punitive for pissing people off. Like it's in an old prison movie, they say you go to the hole or like the hot box or something, and they just leave you in there. And as a 73-year-old woman, like it's crazy how much we use solitary. Like eventually, solitary is going to just be in the normal prisons, and we'll have to like think of something worse to put everybody else in because this just seems like the way it's going.
Yeah, it's a horrible idea in the first place. It's like these contraptions during the slave era. What they would do is that they would make a big wooden box, and they'd build it underground, and you just have the door on top, and they'd stick a slave down there and close the door and lock it and just leave them there for days, weeks. This is what we're doing to people now. We're treating them worse than anything should be treated. Animal, slave, anything no one should be treated like that. Solitary confinement doesn't actually do any good, even for people who the only time it should be used is for people who are obviously a danger to others, even inside of jail, like you were saying. You can't let them be in a regular cell. You just can't, because they're killing people, and
They're continuing to run their empire.
Running their criminal empire. Yeah, exactly. Mafia bosses, things like that. But most of the time,
I'm sorry. You got to remember that this is a corporate-run prison too, right?
Right.
And it's all about cutting costs and everything like that. And that woman,
of course,
she's more expensive than what they want. They want the younger, healthier people, right?
Yeah, that's why they turned down her medicine and gave her some other stuff. Like
it's almost like they're trying to kill her to get her out of the way. It's what it almost seems like. Like they're telling her that you don't matter, we don't care about you. If you die, then that just opens up another slot for someone else to come in.
Someone who's cheaper and healthier to hold.
I feel like they're gonna run into eventually, like something's gonna give with these for-profit prisons. Like
I hope so.
I feel like they have a good strategy in calling themselves the Correction Corporation of America, because that sounds so like cartoony, evil, bad guy like company name that like people probably don't even believe that this is a real thing that we're talking about. But like eventually they're gonna run into like a bad Eighth Amendment judgment, and the judge is gonna have to shut them down, because this, like, you putting a 73-year-old woman in there in solitary without a second drug test, how is that not cruel and unusual punishment?
And it's cruel, just to put someone in solitary for failing a drug test at all. What does that solve? What does that do? And basic psychology classes will tell you that you don't put someone in a box by themselves for a month. They're going to lose their mind. They're going to have, psychological trauma for the rest of their lives for doing that. That's terribly devastating to the human mind, to isolate them and separate them from every other person and creature.
But of course that doesn't matter to them, because hey, we're just doing this corporate prison so we can make money. I mean, that is, of course, the sole purpose of having a prison under private control, over corporate control, is to make as much money as you possibly can. And
we don't need a profit motive.
Grandma, who cares about the guys that die from heat exposure? We did a story on that too. Who cares about those people? We want just to make as much money as we can and treat these people like they're not even human, because society, it's really easy for society to go and forget these people because they're in prison. Oh, you did something wrong. Well, obviously you deserve to be stuck in a hole.
But it's important to point out that these are not businesses. They don't have customers. Like they basically house people for the government and take taxpayer money. Like, this isn't Amazon, like where you get a service and like you can choose to not use it. Like they bribe the government or give campaign contributions. They lobby them to pass stricter laws and get these people thrown in there, and then they shortchange them on food, which I didn't even think was possible considering how little we spend feeding our inmates. They shortchange them on air conditioning, like everything that you could possibly think of. They try and shortchange them on, and including medical care. And like, but these are not, like, being anti Corrections Corporation of America is not anti-capitalism. Like, these are like merged with the government. Like, everybody should be against these prisons, unless you're crazy, or Corrections Corporation of America.
Or
and there
unless
shouldn't
you're
be a
lobbyist
profit.
getting money. Unless
Yeah,
your lobbyist getting money from Corrections
Right.
Corporation of America. And we have plenty of states and plenty of congressmen and plenty of politicians that are getting their... Dude, it's really, really sick, too, that they're getting their pockets lined by these assholes.
right. We don't need a profit motive in our prison system. That's the last place where we need a profit motive. Actually, in the article that I was reading at the very bottom, there was a man from Ireland who made a very good point. And it should be obvious. He's like, I don't even understand the American idea behind for-profit prisons. Shouldn't the idea be to want to have as few people as possible in jail, not as many people as possible? If you have a profit motive behind your prison system, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the incentive to lock up as many people as possible. That's why we have the largest prison population in the world.
And it goes and I actually want it to be like, because what the for-profit prisons always tell you is that per inmate that they're cheaper than the government prisons, but they don't tell you that they lobby to get more inmates, so you end up paying more no matter what. But
And you got to look at why they're cheaper, too.
yeah, but the thing is I want it to be expensive to lock up people. Like if you have a state or city or municipality with the 3-strike law, like I want your city to go bankrupt because that is a stupid fucking law and you're locking up a lot of people that don't need to be locked up. Like throwing somebody in a cage for years on end should be a last resort, right? And
I agree.
Right.
like
I definitely get your point, and I definitely I do agree with you, but I think you eliminate the profit motive out of prison and you get rid of that problem entirely.
But it's still the tough on crime. Like the for-profit prisons are not the cause of our overpopulation, our prison overpopulation. They're a symptom of it. Like we had these ridiculous drug laws and all these people being thrown in prisons, and then these companies figured out a way to make money off of it. But like even if we get rid of for-profit prisons, which will be great, like we're still gonna have the problem with overcrowded prisons.
It's not like we can't solve both problems one at a time.
Right.
It's true. We need to get rid of the drug war and for-profit prisons.
And I'd be scared if I were either of you guys, because you guys live in smaller towns than me. And what a lot of these for-profit prisons do is they'll build a gigantic prison that holds more people than physically live in the entire town. And I'm like,
let me tell you, I lived in a little town called Ionia, a few years ago. And I lived and worked in that town, and guess what? That was the home of the Ionia Supermax. We had a giant prison just outside of town.
Yeah, and
Ionia?
I live in Ionia.
I own you. I own you. That's ironic.
Oh yeah, I own you. Yeah, but that's irony right there.
And these prisons, the for-profit prisons, are inherently corrupt. Like one of the things that they do is donate new cruisers to your local police department. So I wonder what the purpose of that is.
I wonder.
It's like and like back to the 73-year-old woman. Like how messed up are you that you got to deny her medicine? Then you get investigated for committing a crime. You can't deny somebody that in prison their medicine. Like that's not how it works. We have like Supreme Court cases that say you can't do that. Then you fake a drug test and punitively throw her in solitary just because she spoke out about not wanting to die.
And you know what, going back to your point about saying, locking people up should be a last resort, why is this 73-year-old woman in jail in the first place? She's not a danger to society. Yes, she did something wrong and should be punished, but for God's sake, she's 73. Put her on house arrest.
Well, I mean, look.
Put her on probation. Put her on house arrest.
I don't want to downplay embezzlement, because embezzlement, like, you're in a position of trust. That's why that's considered worse than theft, right? And like, you don't want people stealing from their employers all the time. Like, it would not be good for the economy overall if you just let it slide.
Of course not. But I'm saying, probation, house arrest.
I would use some level of discretion. I would be like, look, you know what? You're not going to work in anywhere where you could steal from your employer. I'll put you on house arrest. I'll fine you. I'll think of something.
Yeah.
Like I get your point that she is 73, but I just want to say embezzlement is like it's not the many.
It's a serious crime. It's just not a violent crime.
But it's not among the many non-crimes that we typically cover. People getting thrown away for.
Right. No, it's not a non-crime. It's not a victimless crime either. It's theft, but it's not a violent crime, and she's not a danger to society. And I think given the circumstances and her advanced age, it would have been reasonable in a just society for them to not lock her in jail, especially not taking away her medication or putting her in solitary, but not even putting her in jail in the first place, in my opinion.
Or at least not putting her into a for-profit prison.
I don't
Right.
know, and we don't know if a mandatory minimum played any part in it.
Oh, that's a good point.
It could have been that, if you commit this crime, it doesn't matter how old you are, you go away for this amount of time, no judicial discretion. Or the judge could have been a dumb person, or a jackass. Like Louis Gohmert was a judge once, so we don't know the circumstances of why she got that
Right.
sentence. But I
Just
agree, I would have.
imagine the dumbest man in America being your judge. I weep for those people. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and share with your friends. If you want to see more, go to our channel at youtube.com/TYTNation. And if you really want to support the show, support this channel, go to our fundraising campaign at www.patreon.com/TYTNation. The website is in the description below. Thank you guys, and keep watching.